The no-brainer bit is that the Wildtrak deal would eventually be carried over to the mechanically similar Everest in a bid to liven up the image of what is, for most of us, the best UTA-based SUV wagon on the market right now. Okay, so there are no plans for a Wildtrak X Everest version, not that Ford wants to tell us about anyway, but the Ranger Wildtrak's approach has been followed for the big family wagon with some impressive results. The real question, of course, is whether the Everest needed the Wildtrak stamp in the first place and whether that work and play theme gives the newcomer a greater appeal or simply blurs the focus of what the Everest has already become. After all, compared with the average cashed-up trotty who buys a Ranger, a mortgaged-up family in 2023 is possibly less likely to be prepared to spend extra on the promise of weekend fun vibes. View full pricing and specs. If you love the Isuzu D-Max UTA but need some extra boot space and seating for the family, then the MU-X is your ride. It's roughly the same price, so you don't feel like you're getting stung for needing those extra features, either. It's got some competition with the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport and new Ford Everest, as well as the Toyota Fortuner, but the four-wheel drive capabilities and family-friendly interior means the MU-X more than holds its own. I'm beginning to understand why Isuzu doesn't bother having any more than 2 horses in its stable. Deep dive comparison. Verdict. The extra money you'll pay for an Everest Wildtrak over the next model down Sport V6 seems entirely justified by the extra equipment. And, like any V6-powered Ranger or Everest, the end result stands head and shoulders above the bulk of its competition in terms of how it works and feels to drive. That alone marks it as a vehicle that you'd certainly shortlist if you're in the market. The sophisticated driveline is a tad thirsty compared with some newer engine designs, but you can't argue with the actual performance, nor the refinement which tipped the Everest into another level of sophistication. The safety package too leaves most of the Everest's competition wanting. Our caveat on all this, however, would be that you choose the no-cost optional all-terrain tires and 18-inch alloy wheels. These would not only give the ride quality that final lick of polish, but would also open up the vehicle's otherwise massive potential as an off-roader. Isuzu has proven that you don't need a lot of horses in the stable to get things right, and the MU-X 4x4 LST is a horse I can back. It offers kid-friendly growing space, a roomy interior for parents and a powerful engine. It also has just enough creature comforts to make it competitive against its rivals, but I would have liked to have seen a few more scattered throughout for the price tag, especially in that third row. While the driving is pretty solid, the ride isn't as refined as it could be, but my family really enjoyed the MU-X this week and it earns a solid 8.0 out of 10 from us. Design. The Everest is cut from the same cloth as many of its competitors, being based on a dual cab UTA that is fitted with a station wagon body. And like those other vehicles, the UTA's rear leaf springs have been replaced with coil springs for better ride quality. Even though the rear axle is still a solid one, not independent suspension, the coils do a better job of smoothing out the ride in the Everest gets away with this extra compliance because it's not being asked to carry a huge payload in the back. While tires often mock at the car, in this case, Ford has given buyers a choice. If you really want to make the most of the Everest's impressive off-road ability, then the no-cost optional all-terrains on 18-inch alloy rims are the way to go. Our test car, however, was fitted with the more road-oriented Goodyear Wranglers in a 255/55 or 20 fitment. At 18.25mm tall, the MU-X has clear SUV proportions, but urban drivers need not stress because, at 4,850mm long and 1870mm wide, it's still accommodating in a tight car park. The nose is nicely tapered and accentuated by a large chrome grille with black highlights and sharp LED lights. It's very similar to its stablemate, the D-Max, but the addition of the boot doesn't compromise its curbside appeal. There are no sharp blocky-looking edges on this, and while handsome, it doesn't prance to announce its presence. There's a subtlety to its styling that should see it age well. The interior has soft touch points throughout that are mixed with a nice combo of trims to make it feel refined, but it is let down by flimsy/plasticky sun visors and door paneling. Practicality. While some Everests are 5-seaters, the Wildtrak gets the 7-seat layout with the rear row of seats folding flat when not in use to give a decent amount of luggage space. But even when all 7 chairs are in use, however, the Everest doesn't suffer quite the same lack of cargo space as any other vehicle this size and layout. The luggage bay also gets a small underfloor storage area and a single 12-volt socket as well as tie-down points but no cargo nets. Access to the third row is also a bit tricky for bigger folk, again, no surprises there, and, like the first and second rows, the seats seem a bit short on padding and the second row center position remains the short straw. But the best thing about the Everest second row seating is that it addresses the common complaint in dual cab utes of the seat's backrest being too upright. And the solution to that? A backrest that can be reclined. Hallelujah! It's nice to see touches like the reading lights in the second and third row, air vents ditto and cup holders for the third row. The second row also gets control over the temperature and fan speed, and there's a pair of charging ports for the second row, too. But put a taller person in the second row behind a 182 centimeters driver, and suddenly the legroom starts to turn adequate rather than generous. The heated, ventilated front seats are great, but if anything, the cushions themselves might lack a bit of padding. That will probably be a bonus for longer journeys, but at first acquaintance, the seats do seem a bit firm. Better news is a tilt and reach adjustable steering column, which still seems to be hard to find in this type of vehicle. The menu-driven systems are all easy to work out and use thanks to the huge central screen, and phone connectivity is fast and easy. The voice control function works very well, too. Our biggest ergonomic complaint arrives when it comes time to manually select gears. Even if Ford didn't want to fit paddle shifters, which it hasn't, there's always the possibility to use the T-bar selector as a means of simply and accurately shifting ratios. But it hasn't done that either. Instead, you get a fiddly little switch on the side of the selector, which is black on black just to make things trickier. Fail. The interior is roomy with decent leg and headroom available to front and middle row passengers. The side steps made it easy for my 6-year-old to get in and out without my help, always a plus, and the high ride ensured a good view for him this week. Storage throughout is adequate for an SUV of this size, but the middle console and drink bottle holders could be a little deeper and wider. The double glove box and hidden retractable cup holders in the dashboard are a highlight, though. I always like to have a powered tailgate, and the level load space of the boot made it very easy to slide gear in and out this week. The boot is very practical with 311L of space available when all rows are in use, but you can bump that up to a massive 1119L when the third row is flat. You can also knock it up again to a whopping 2138L with all back seats are folded down, if you need it. Impressively, you also get a full-size spare tire too. The 9.0-inch touchscreen multimedia system is easy to use once you get used to it, and the built-in satellite navigation was a plus. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it was simple to get the connection going, but it did take a few minutes for the CarPlay to kick in once you started the car up. I prefer to see a 360-degree view camera on large SUVs like this, but the reversing camera in the MU-X is adequate and clear. Price and features. As usual, a new model slotted in between existing ones only makes the price list a more crowded place, and the Everest Wildtrak's $74,704 ticket lobs it into the mix between the Sport 4WD at $72,490 and the flagship Everest model, the Platinum, at $79,490. For the record, according to Ford, the Sport model marks a split in the Everest range where the offerings fall either into the luxury side of things, Platinum, or the adventure category, Wildtrak. Does that help? Maybe. There's also ambient lighting inside, with zone lighting for the exterior, and the 360-degree camera system is also fitted. A tire pressure monitoring system is also standard, which is one of the most important steps up from the Sport model. Speaking of tires, the Wildtrak also has a choice of all-terrain or more conventional road-oriented tires, which we'll get to in a moment. The all-terrains are a no-cost option. So what's missing? Not much. Paddle shifters would definitely make a nice addition, especially considering the fiddly selector switch you get instead. But as it sits, the extra kit over the Sport really does seem to justify the extra money being asked. I've been driving the top-spec MU-X LS grade, and it's priced at $67,400 before on-road costs. Isuzu currently has a National Drive Award